to me, that's like the birth of the universal monster. It's like that scene is like the birth of this universe. It's like,
Lo and behold, the prodigal son returns.
it's worked for about 100 years now. So it's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But just recontextualize these characters, but through a horror lens. I think that's the most important part.
Awesome point, Brian. Awesome point. Is there a particular movie that you would like to see being remade? I know that there are a lot
Creature
of
from the
rumors
Black
going.
Lagoon.
Yeah, yeah. I was like,
Uh,
awesome, awesome.
just because I know we got The Shape of Water, which I do like,
Mm.
but I would like a more traditional set in like the original location kind of Creature from the Black Lagoon, like in the in the actual Amazon and stuff like that. And I think it could be easily recontextualized with stories of, I mean, stuff that goes on in our day-to-day life with as far as in the States, especially borders and kind of big ideas like that, and who belongs where, and
Mm.
in one place, like these humans kind of step in the land of the creature, and they're the ones tormenting him essentially, if you really look at that
Yeah.
original film. But yeah, the creature definitely needs another. I think he just needs to be introduced to a lot of the modern audiences now. I feel like he hasn't really gotten a big film in a while.
You were talking about Shape of Water. I don't think Shape of Water, ever really attempted to. It's sort of inspired by, as a sort of kind of,
Right.
winking at the movie rather than going out and saying this is my version of it. But I've heard rumors that Tim Burton might be on board, or I've heard this. Ryan Gosling as the Wolfman. I've heard all of these interesting little stories. So let's see what happens. Do you have a favorite scene? I know that you've watched so many of these movies. I know that there are probably many countless scenes that are dear to you. For me, if you don't mind me telling you, we were talking about the 1940s, and there was the movie House of Dracula. And
Yeah.
I don't know if the scene that I'm about to speak to you about is my favorite scene, because it's the first sort of black and white Universal monster movie scene that I ever saw, or if there's something more to it. But it's the scene where Lon Chaney Lon Chaney Jr. is in the cell, and he looks out the window, through the bars, and he sees the full moon, and you just see the torment on his face as he turns into the Wolfman. And there's just something so cool about that scene. It's like there's something iconic about it. I don't know why, and that's my favorite scene of all. Do you have a favorite scene?
So first off, with the when you said House of Dracula, and I know you're a big Wolfman fan, so as soon as you're mentioning that, I was like, he's gonna mention that prison cell scene, because it's fantastic, because it's kind of like the first time you see, there's no argument in that scene. It's like there's people watching him literally transform into a werewolf. There's no ambiguity to it. It's just straight up. Yeah, he's a werewolf, and we can move on and continue with the story. Um, but okay, so I think I have like two answers to this, because my favorite scene that I think to this day I just like watch, and it still probably has the same effect on me, is probably the birth of the monster in Frankenstein 31. It's like the "it's alive" scene. It's like, no matter how many times I hear that line and that crazy ecstatic look on Conclave's face, it's like, to me, that's like the birth of the universal monster. It's like that scene is like the birth of this universe. It's like Karloff's monster is born, and I think everything else with it as well.
Yeah.
So as far as like the powerfulness of like a scene, it's definitely that. Um, but one that's like still kind of creepy, that I don't know if it gets enough attention, is actually in Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman, which is one of my kind of like, oh yes, I'll just put this on like for complete fun. Like it's one of my favorites. Uh, the first time I think Larry transforms out while he's being brought to the hospital, uh, there's a kind of like a creepy little quiet scene where an inspector is kind of or a police officer is walking through the streets of
Oh yeah,
um
yeah,
and the Wolfman kind of just like you see a shadow, you see him
yeah.
jumping from here to here, and then it kind of has like a little bit of a jump scare to it with like the officer's looking back and forth, and then suddenly with the music kind of cue, he jumps in and attacks them. Like I do think it's a great little moment that is indicative of more modern jump scares and stuff like that. So I thought it's just like a cool little like scene that I'm just like, oh, that seems more like a modern thing.
I love those scenes that you're talking about, by the way. And I mean, the "It's Alive" scene is probably a lot of people. It's probably the scene, like you said, that sort of draws a lot of people into the golden age of horror, right? Because it's this convergence of playing God, of nature's elements, and technology, going out of control. That scene just sort of exemplifies all of that. Kind of like that we're talking about the cell scene in House of Dracula. There's something about that there that's also like, here you've got this monster that's trapped inside this guy, and this guy that's trapped inside this cell, and it's the one place where he thinks, hey, maybe I'm okay over here, but he sees the full moon, and even there he can't escape from from all these troubles. So there's also something cool about that when
One
people
more
ask.
thing on the,
Yeah,
if you don't mind, on the point
please.
of that scene, uh, it's funny that it's almost like at first he's like, oh, I'm locked up in here, and then as soon as he sees that moon, it's like, well, maybe I should stay in here. Like maybe you shouldn't let me out of this thing. But I even think it's more powerful with the end of that movie. It's like you see that torment of the full moon, and then that beautiful scene at the end when he's finally cured and it's this
Mm,
relief. It's like I like that. I like those bookends of that movie. There's
yeah.
not a I don't love that movie, but I do love those two moments for that character. But yeah, just had to get that out.
No, awesome, awesome. I mean, the production value, the production values on House of Dracula left much to be desired. I mean, I heard, I don't know how true this is, but they actually cut scenes from other movies and sort of finished the movie off with that. And of course, we didn't have Bela Lugosi coming back, and Boris Karloff, wanted nothing to do with it. Basically, only have Lon Chaney Jr., coming back and reprising the role. So kudos to him, because I think although who was the actor that played Dracula? Was it
John
Carradine?
Carradine. Yeah,
Yeah,
John
that's
Carradine.
right. I mean, he did something really awesome with Dracula. I thought, he gave something different. It didn't have the sort of iconic kind of stay that Bela Lugosi had, or what Christopher Lee later had in the horror in the Hammer movies, but it still had something, and I felt quite charming and different.